Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Party Talk, where we empower leaders in youth drug prevention. Today, I'm chatting it up with Mary and Jill, and they run an epic organization called Girls Mentorship. Will you do us honor of introducing like the scope of what you do and what you're passionate about?
Yeah, of course. Like you said, we are the co-founders and the faces behind a company and really what's growing into a brand, not necessarily what our intention was, of a company called Girls Mentorship. And we teach life and personal development skills to teen and tween girls. So realistically, we want girls to leave our presence, our events, the things that we do for them, feeling more confident in who they are, feeling like they have a better sense of self-awareness, understanding more about their self-esteem, really able to walk away being the leaders in their life, not someone who is a follower or someone who is easily succumbing to peer pressure. We want girls to understand who they are and what they stand for.
That is incredible. And before we get into how you do that, tell us a little bit about you personally and what made you passionate about this work.
Well, you're going to hear two voices. So Mary was the one who just spoke. I'm Jill. We're stoked to be here. And we love, love, love talking about what we do. How we came about this company. It was born in 2020, in the middle of the pandemic. As we all remember, everything was shut down. People were stuck in their houses. And really, there was a need from parents around supporting their daughter in getting her involved in something that was almost like an extracurricular activity, but obviously we had to be online for that. So I'd say this was my former job was I actually was a performance coach for teen athletes. So I focused primarily with girls high school age, and I would come in and really develop them on the mental side of the game so that their confidence in whatever sport that they were pursuing, that it matched their skill, their physical skills matched their mental skills to really to be really at their peak performance. And when COVID hit, parents came back to me and said, "Hey, are you hosting anything or doing anything for these girls?" And at the time, I was neck deep teaching a preschooler and a kindergartner online learning. So I wasn't thinking about doing anything. But what happened was I got the request enough where I said, you know what, maybe I should explore this idea. So I created an online call series. We called it Camp Social. And I put something out there for 4 weeks where we would bring girls on a call. And I opened it up for all girls because at this point, athletes were also stuck at home, as all girls were. So I said, anyone who wants to come between the ages of 10 to 14 or whomever, come on this call and let's just jam and spend time together for 4 weeks. And I knew I didn't want to do the call alone. So that's where Mary comes in. And we worked together at Lululemon formerly. So I knew I wanted to bring her in as a guest speaker. And after that first call got over, I invited her back for the remainder of camp. And after those 4 weeks, we looked at each other and we were like, oh my gosh, that felt electric. And that was incredible. We saw girls just transform before our eyes, which was wild. And we knew that we couldn't just sit on that idea, that we really had to move forward in creating more of these experiences for girls. And that's how Girls Mentorship was born.
Wow. And Mary, what did you think initially when she came to you with the idea?
Well, honestly, this was something, yes, that came to fruition in 2020, but it had been brewing in us for the previous decade with the work we were doing on who we were. So Jill and I, apart from one another, had really invested in our own personal growth and development. We both came from totally different backgrounds from one another, but backgrounds that desperately needed to take a look in the mirror to be like, okay, well, where am I holding myself back? Where am I victim blaming? Where am I not taking personal responsibility for my actions? And how has that held me back? So outside of one another, we had invested thousands of dollars, hours, time, energy, effort into going to personal growth and development seminars and workshops and really investing in ourselves. So by the time 2020 came around, the question of, man, what would we have done with these skills when we were 10, 14, 18, whatever the age was? So when the call came through, it felt really natural. It almost felt like a gift from God to be like, here's your opportunity. Like, you want to seek purpose or you want to make meaning of the things that you've gone through in your past. Here's an opportunity to really flesh that idea out and see where it leads. So it was a hell yes from me from the moment I answered the phone, because not only was Jill my boss at Lululemon in a previous chapter of our life, but she was somebody who became an incredible friend of mine. And we spent so much time together over 2020 that it was a no-brainer to be like, well, I'm not doing anything. Why not give back to humanity?
We already spent time together.
Right. So it was a hell yes from the get.
Wow, that is so cool. And it's hard for me to contain my excitement because I know some of the answers of these things, but can you take us just fast forward to today? Because that was in 2020 when the seed was planted initially, and y'all got to work on this idea of Girls Mentorship, and what you had called, like the social camp or the social club is, can you take us to 2023 and what your day-to-day looks like as far as how are you implementing your mission out there?
Gah. What doesn't it look like? I think for anybody who's ever experienced entrepreneurship or following a passion or trying to really discover your purpose, it looks like a lot of writing on the wall. It looks like a lot of ideas thrown out there and trying them and pivoting and nixing this and opening that. And it looks like ADD. It looks like so many text messages exchanged,
Tabs open on your computer
and in your brain. So, I mean, in this very moment in time, like right at the center of this conversation, Jill and I are getting ready to host our second annual summer camp, which we've dubbed Pursue More. So we've got the tagline, pursue more individuality, pursue more compassion, pursue more friendships, pursue more positivity. And we hosted our first summer camp last year. We saw 140 girls come through. So we're hosting it this year, hoping for similar numbers, similar turnouts, but we've really gotten to expand our entire program, including what this camp looks like. So a lot of experimentation has really turned into us being able to touch, move, and inspire around 3,000 girls and their families at this point. So we've worked with schools hand in hand, meaning we've done teacher trainings, student trainings, we've done parent-specific trainings. We go in and work with sports teams on their mental game. So a little bringing Jill's past into this current business. We host our own monthly workshops and one-on-one coaching. We've really tried a lot of things in order to figure out what creates the most impact and what creates the most results. Like I said, when we opened, we really want girls to understand that they have the power of their own life, because so much of what girls go through in this really integral age is succumbing to other people's expectations of them, or comparison, not enoughness, that imposter syndrome, where you think you're center stage and you're naked and everyone is looking at absolutely everything you're doing. And that's just not the case. And we want them to understand that, because that means that they get to take the power back in their own life, not the other way around, the world having the power over them. So right now, I mean, we have a hustlin' and bustlin' business that has grown tremendously over the last 3 years, to where we joke that we're not even in control of this crazy train anymore. We're just, we're along for the ride, baby.
Wow. And what I love about it so much is that when being in the drug prevention field is, a lot of people will say, we need to stop this vaping or marijuana use, THC, alcohol. These young people are getting in their hands. If you look at the root of that problem, those are the stuff that you're really pouring into for these young girls, is like, you're doing drug prevention work. you're doing it so much in prevention that some people wouldn't even call it that, but it actually is.
Right.
And so what I would love to know is, what are some of the things that, knowing that our audience is people who are working for communities, maybe they're working with schools, and they want it to be a safe place, a safe culture for students to learn and grow, is how are your results or your activities contributing to that kind of work that they might see as a community or a school?
It's been really interesting because when the more that we've worked with girls, we've realized that a lot of the girls struggle in the same areas. So as unique and probably troublesome that their experiences are to them, at the end of the day, we're realizing that they're struggling with the same things. They're struggling with confidence. They're struggling with friendships. They're struggling with comparison and social media and being bullied online and all of those things. So when we can come in and make an impact and teach girls the tools and strategies around combating that and responding in a healthy way and being resilient, because we always say the work that we do we're not a magic pill. However, what we are is teaching them that they are capable of bouncing back. So it's shortening the gap. And when girls can bounce back faster, they can feel more confident to speak up in class or to go after that position that they want in Stugo. And that builds their street cred, that builds their confidence, their self-esteem, so that then, like, if we're continuing to grow with them, like, they're growing in their adulthood, and they're going to be the ones that are going to be change makers, and the ones that we desperately need when we get older, to say, you know what, but these girls have the skills and the wherewithal to really guide and lead us. So it's focusing on developing the girl as herself, but then having her realize that when she is whole and complete, she then can lead others. And then it's a movement. The ripple effect is massive. And then as a community, it's like, man, there's more people speaking the same language, and we want to do good and make a greater impact. So touching one girl is incredible, but really, if we can have multiple girls be a part of this conversation and realize that challenges are a part of life and failure is a part of life, and that's okay. But how do we come together and empower girls to say that you've got this, we believe in you? And if we can foster and nurture that year after year after year, she's going to start believing that herself. And that's only going to impact everyone around her in her life.
I would say additionally, in terms of that question, like what we've realized is girls obviously aren't the only ones that need to pick up on these skills. So when we have an impact on one girl, she absolutely impacts the community. But what we're also finding is that the parents, teachers, coaches, so on and so forth that we have conversations with oftentimes are not well versed in these skills and tools as well. And we find them leaning into these conversations more, which helps expand that conversation to the community level that Jill was just talking about. So we are on the same page. So we are speaking the same language, and everyone's working towards a common goal.
Yes. And in case someone hasn't told you recently, thank you, because not only, like you said, you're influencing a student who's influencing their families, and the work is touching different parts of this community, but it even comes down to saving students' lives. As we know that, like, the suicide levels in this country aren't just it's because we might feel isolated or like there's no hope. So the work that you're doing is building confidence. It's creating community. It's actually life-saving work. And so for the schools that get to work for you, maybe they don't even know it yet, or they can't quantify it because it's preventing negative things from happening while producing positive results. And that's hard to measure sometimes because something didn't happen. You know, the bullying didn't happen, or skipping school didn't happen. The suicide didn't happen. The drug use didn't happen. So in case someone hasn't told you recently, I'm like tearing up a little bit. I just love what you're doing, and thank you. Thank you for what you're doing.
Oh,
Hey,
thank you. I think that's such a beautiful call out. And something I heard in a sermon yesterday was we often thank God for the prayers that did get answered, but we forget to thank God for the things that we don't even know were at our doorstep, right? We forget that there are things that could have come for us that were prevented in some way, shape, or form that we didn't even know about. And I think that's a really beautiful call out because we were so hung up on the statistics and how crazy off the charts things like anxiety, depression, suicide rates are, attempted suicide rates are, that we often forget that when we can negate those things from happening, it kind of goes out of sight, out of mind as to why.
Yes. And I want to ask you a little bit about your personalities because you told me that fun is a value of yours. And whenever I'm with you, you just have the best smiles on your face. You two are always having fun together. And I don't know if this is just part of who you are or if this is a learned thing. But for people that are doing life-changing work like you are, what can they learn from your fun attitude or posture or whatever it is?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's definitely learned, but we're definitely both rooted in it. And what I say learned is we had to really figure out how to funnel it because when we were in high school, middle school, I think both of us can attest to the fact that it wasn't fun for teachers to have us in class, right? We were the chatty Cathys. We were the outspoken ones. We were the ones who blurted. We all know kids who blurt and interrupt. They turn into adults who blurt and interrupt, right? So I think with the work we've done on ourselves, it's really helped us like rope in our personalities because granted, they can be a lot for people. And I think that's one thing we want girls to know is to be in this work, to be world changers, to be self changers. You don't have to be extroverted and exuberant and out there like us. But you're right, with the work that we're doing, it pays to have these bubbly, inviting personalities because that's exactly what it does. It invites girls into our world and our personalities, and it helps bring their walls down really quickly. So something that is incredibly important for both Jill and I as friends, as partners in this business, and as individuals is making sure that we see, value, and hear people. We want to make sure that regardless of who you are, if you cross our paths and we have an interaction with you via FaceTime, via in-person, via email, we want to make sure that you feel that we value who you are and we leave you better than we found you. And I think that really came clear for us while working retail because so often you can be a customer in a retail situation and have an attitude that's negative towards your experience, right? And then you go home and you talk to your spouse or your significant other or your friends about this negative experience that you had. I'm never going back to this restaurant because this happened. I had an awful experience with the sales associate at this particular store. And as humans, the negativity sticks in your brain a lot easier than the positivity does. So I think working retail, we were challenged to find the fun or the sparkle in certain interactions with people who may have come across us with frowns on their faces. And I think we've just always made it a point in those situations to try to turn those frowns upside down, as cliche as that sounds. But how do you turn someone's day around and have them go home and talk about the positive experience that they had with that sales associate? Like, yeah, I walked into the store and I was pissed, but I walked out and that girl told me a joke that I'll never forget. Like, she made a price is right quip at the register, and that made my whole entire day, and that's what I'm going to remember. So our sole purpose is truly to make people better than we actually found them before their interaction with us. And I think that's really where the energy comes from to continue to do this work. And we want people to know that we care.
Mm-hmm. And fun really is in flow because yes, our energy is vivacious and bright. And we also struggle. We're human beings. So as much as we are positive and we see the silver lining in things, we are challenged. And when we are challenged, that is such a moment for us to practice. It's practice being in flow. It's accepting as opposed to resisting. It's like really allowing what it is to be And then being able to be in choice about that. It's like, am I going to let this thing take me down? Or, I mean, can we laugh about it? What can we learn from it? So finding flow has also really contributed to our fun.
I love that. And I think for the people that are listening to this and they might be wondering, because you are, energetic, passionate people going after your dreams and your cause, you're entrepreneurial, is some of these people, like principals, have to run a school and might feel like they're entrepreneurial and they're dealing with the 10 things at once. People who run these drug prevention coalitions, they sometimes have to start from scratch or take care of funding, build teams, figure out their programming. And you might have already worked with some of them, but the question is, like, I wear this hat that's like the business hat, right? And I have to deal with parents and the rules and the scary stuff. And then I have this other hat where I have to engage young people. And you two are pros at this. What are some like few tips that you can give us to truly engage young people in this positive movement that you're doing?
I mean, first off, it's definitely being ourselves. We're ourselves through and through 100% of the time. It doesn't matter if I'm talking to a teenager, I'm talking to a parent. Yes, maybe the verbiage I'm using is going to be different in the engagement, but we are 100% ourselves. Second thing I want to say on that is we've done such a good job in the past of creating these generational gaps between millennials and Gen Z and baby boomers. And we point out things that other generations do that we see as quote unquote wrong or being a boomer or whatever. It's really, really important to us to bridge that gap and to ask questions that help us understand why the verbiage has changed, why they're listening to the music they're listening to, why they're feeling how they're feeling about the state of the world. When typically I think people love to close off like, oh, those little whippersnappers are just listening to this and it hurts my ears, or I don't understand that style, because we often forget what it feels like to be that age when realistically we were all that age once. So we really try to challenge not only ourselves to put ourselves back in those shoes in order to relate, we also challenge parents to remember what it felt like being that age for the first time as well, because so many firsts happen, right? Puberty, the changes that come along with puberty are cognitive, physical, mental, friendship. There are so many things happening within the body of a teenager that we often just write off as selfish or, rude or this or that or the other.
Your life's not even hard right now.
Right.
You don't know hard.
What do you have to stress about? You don't have a mortgage payment. You don't have this. It's like, do you remember what it felt like to be 13? I was stressed. The tests, the friends, the social dynamics. There was a lot to feel for the first time that stressed me out. And to just challenge parents or adults even, just to remember what those challenges felt like at that age is easier for the relatability factor and easy for us to be like, we see you because we were you. And I never want that to change. I never want to be the old person that's like, why are they wearing that? Like, why did you wear what you wore? Because your parents
100%.
also questioned it and you didn't appreciate them questioning it. And now guess what? You're doing the same thing 20, 30, 40 years later that you actually hated. So give them a little grace, give them a little leeway, because they're not self-centered, they're self-seeking. They're trying to find themselves for the first time in their whole lives.
And all kids want is to be seen, to be loved, and to be valued, and to be supported. So if there are adults that are in their corner to say, I see you, I got you, and how you're feeling is normal, man, you want to talk about walls being, just shattered, coming down. That is so cool for us to just be, just change the perspective of how we see our youth is like, man, they are smart. They are so dang capable. And if we can actually show up and be in a conversation with them in that way, so much goodness can come from interactions like that when we can really show up as ourselves and just honor where each other are at in the journey.
That is so true. And it's easy to get trapped in the mindset of like, oh, they're different. I don't relate. Yeah, the music is terrible. They're on their phones, whatever it is. But you're so correct. Is we all were there or we're currently there. We're just choosing something different, but we have the same hangups as they do as adults. And I love it. You'll see in a previous podcast, I interviewed a 17-year-old from Ohio, and he seems like the brightest kid you've ever met in your life. You know, he's in all of these clubs. He's working a job. He's on like the governor's board for this crazy program, and taking college credit. Like the list goes on, right? Like, and then you talk to him and think you sound like an adult and you care about your community like an adult. And I was asked him, I was like, how are you like this? It seems, quote, it seems like you're an anomaly. And I think the truth is, and like he said, he's not an anomaly. There are students out there, like you said, are craving acceptance and belonging and to feel valued. And if we're able to help them with that, you get to see the fruit, which is like develop leadership skills, confidence, and life skills. And it can transform their life just being seen for who they are by somebody else. Because it's hard to feel it when you're like you said, your body's changing and it's new, and you look online and it's all or it's all comparison. But to have somebody like you in our lives to share that is transformational.
Yeah. Well, and this one little statistic is having at least one relationship with a supportive adult is the most common protective factor for childhood resilience. And from the work we all do, we understand that resilience is a key factor to having positive mental health outcomes. And positive mental health can prevent so many negative outcomes. I mean, from suicide to depression to anxiety to attempts to, I mean, there's so many things that having a positive mental health status can give to you in your life, that it takes one supportive adult to help build kids' resilience. And if you're a parent and you're listening to this, you're like, I'm positive, I'm an accepting adult. You are doing the best that you can with the deck that you've been given, the hand that you've been given. But do you remember really loving and leaning into your parents as a resource when you were that age? I would venture to say no. You probably hated taking their advice. You probably never went to them with your issues because you were fearful of how they would look at you or the trouble that you might get in. Go on, so on and so forth. So just know that if it's not you, it's okay to invite other supportive adults into your child's life in order to garner those positive mental health outcomes.
And if you're not a parent listening to this, as just an adult being in this work, so whether it's administrators or teachers or whomever, leaders in the community, it's like, man, wouldn't it be cool if that was you? Like, what a responsibility to take on to say, you know what? I accept that challenge. That's so me. Like, I want to be the cool aunt for my nieces. I want them to come to me over anybody else. And I wear that so proudly. And I also try to be that for my kids, but I also know I'm not going to be that for my kids. So who else, like Mary said, am I inviting in to say, these are your people. These are your safe adults that you can go to them for anything, because if you can't go to me, you're definitely not going to go to your friends. I don't want them to. I know they will, but also we have to weigh out, where do they go if they are being challenged, if they are feeling hurt, if they are feeling overwhelmed. And it's just such a beautiful call to say that, like, that could be you.
If people are on this call and they're like, hey, Jill and Mary, Girls Mentorship, y'all are amazing. How can we learn more about working with you? Whether that's a speaking engagement, a training, a workshop, sending my kids to your camp, where can they go and how can they stay in touch with you?
I mean, we just recently Googled our own selves, and it turns out that our programs are on the first page, which is super cool. So girlsmentorship.com, Girls Mentorship on Instagram. It's spelled exactly like it sounds. There's no phonetically funniness happening there with Y's or Z's. It's Girls Mentorship. Basically on any platform that you want to find us on. Not to say we're super active on all those platforms, but if you search us on those platforms, you will find us. But we're most active on Instagram. And then our website is pretty up to date in terms of the things we're offering. If you want to be a community partner with us, meaning you want to bring us in to do a talk or a training, all of that information can be found on our website.
Perfect. Well, thank you both for doing this episode with me. And for everyone watching, thank you for tuning into another episode of Party Talk, where we empower leaders in youth drug prevention. So if you listened, I know you're empowered. Please check us out next Monday and reach out to Girls Mentorship if you need absolutely anything. This was incredible. Thank you both.
Jake, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.